A 66-year-old grandmother was living alone in a peaceful town in Rhode Island when her life was brutally cut short. She was attacked, assaulted, and beaten, then left lifeless in her own bathtub, a plugged-in hair dryer tossed into the water beside her. It sounds like something straight out of a crime thriller, but this was horrifyingly real. A man named Jeremy Motyka was eventually found guilty of the murder and sentenced to life behind bars. Now, more than 20 years later, he's back in court, claiming he deserves another chance, a complete do-over. So the question is, what exactly happened that night in the first place?
It's Sunday, May 30th, 1999, in Little Compton, Rhode Island, a picturesque little town where not much happens, especially early on a Sunday morning. Sometime before dawn, 66-year-old Angela Spence-Shaw is attacked inside her home. Later that morning, when she doesn't show up for work, a friend goes over to check on her. She goes upstairs and finds Angela's body in the bathtub. She's wearing only her pink nightshirt with nothing on below the waist. Bizarrely, there's also an electric hairdryer floating in the tub, which she unplugs. Angela has been badly beaten. According to one of the first responders, an EMT who actually knew Angela, the beating was so severe she's barely recognizable. Investigators will later determine Angela was raped before she died, and according to the medical examiner, it's not just one thing that killed her. She suffered a brutal beating, but was still alive before being drowned in the bathwater. As police start moving through the house, one thing becomes clear pretty quickly. This doesn't look like a burglary. Nothing's been torn apart. Angela's wallet is still there. The cash she keeps in a ceramic box on her bedroom dresser, more than $500, is untouched. Her jewelry is still where it belongs, and there are no signs that anyone forced their way into the house. But when investigators step into the bedroom, the picture changes. There are pools of blood on the bed and on the floor. Blood is tracked across the carpet, leading straight into the bathroom where Angela was found. There's blood on the furniture, on the walls, especially behind the bed, and along the wall and door frame that lead into the bathroom. The bed itself has been pushed away from the wall and stripped of its sheets. A pillow and pillowcase, both stained with blood, are lying on the floor nearby. Whatever happened in this house, it didn't happen quietly. And that's part of what makes this so jarring, because by every measure, Angela Spence-Shaw's life is about as quiet as it gets. She's 66 years old, originally from North London, England, but she moved to the United States years ago. She's a widow twice over, and she has 2 sons. By the time we're here, she's living alone in this coastal New England village that hasn't seen a murder in 34 years. She works at a greenhouse. She's the president of the local garden club. She volunteers to help the needy. She likes painting and bird watching. In other words, she is not living a life that comes with enemies, secrets, or late-night drama.
She was living a quiet, simple life. The kind where the biggest worry on any given day might just be whether her plants were getting enough sunlight. So when investigators began piecing things together, they weren't just searching for a suspect. They were trying to understand how something so brutal could happen in a place, and a life, like hers. As it turns out, the attacker didn't need to know much about Angela herself. All they needed was one crucial detail: what was happening inside her home. Because at the time, her house was right in the middle of a renovation.
Just 2 days earlier, on Friday, May 28th, a construction crew broke through a wall to connect a new addition to the existing house. It's part of the job, but it also means the house is temporarily unsecured. Anyone who knows about that opening could get inside without forcing a door or breaking a window. And one of the people who knows about it is a 23-year-old carpenter named Jeremy Motyka. Jeremy is part of the 3-man crew working on Angela's home that day. He's there when the wall is opened up. He knows exactly how the house looks, where the openings are, and how easy it would be for someone to come back later without drawing attention. At this point, he's not the suspect yet, but his name is now firmly on the list. At the time of the murder, Jeremy lives in Fall River, Massachusetts with his girlfriend Patricia, their little boy, and other members of Patricia's family. But that Memorial Day weekend, the house empties out. Patricia leaves town with their son and her family heading to Cape Cod for the holiday. Jeremy tells her he doesn't want to deal with the traffic, so he decides to stay home alone for the weekend. Which means that while Angela is killed in her Little Compton home, Jeremy is by himself with no one around to account for where he is or what he's doing. And that's another detail investigators are going to pay very close attention to. According to Patricia, Jeremy gets home from work on Saturday, May 29th, and they spend most of the afternoon and evening talking on the phone, or more accurately, arguing on the phone. The calls go on and off for hours, finally ending sometime around 9:30 or 10 o'clock that night. And Patricia says these aren't calm, loving conversations. Jeremy's hostile, he's angry, and while he's speaking clearly enough to understand, she gets the sense he's been drinking. Meanwhile, someone else saw Jeremy that night, and their version looks a little different. A 17-year-old neighbor, Kelly, was hanging out with Jeremy outside in a neighbor's yard that Saturday night with some other teenagers until around 1 or 1:30 in the morning. He was drinking rum and beer, which she knows for a fact because he was sharing it with the group, which is not great for several reasons. Before Jeremy showed up, the teens were smoking marijuana. He asks if they have any more. They don't. So naturally, some phone calls are made to see if anyone can track some down.
As the night comes to an end and Kelly begins heading home, Jeremy asks her to come back with him. She refuses, and just like that, it's the last time she ever sees him. The next morning, Sunday, May 30th, around 8:30 a.m., Jeremy suddenly calls Patricia, saying he's on his way to Cape Cod. When he reaches Falmouth, sometime between 9:30 and 10 a.m., Patricia notices something strange. He gets sick, vomits, then goes straight to bed where he sleeps for most of the day. Concerned, she asks him what's going on. Jeremy casually brushes it off, claiming he spent the previous night at home, drinking alone.
The following morning, they head back to Fall River, and not long after they walk through the door, Rhode Island State Police show up. Guess why? They tell Jeremy they're investigating the murder of Angela Spence-Shaw, and they'd very much like to know where he was that weekend. Jeremy tells them he worked until about 3 p.m. on Saturday, then went home and drank beer. He says he stayed there all night, except for a short visit to a neighbor's house where he hung out with some teenagers until around midnight. After that, he says he called a friend, a former co-worker named Chris Taylor, then went to sleep. Police also question Patricia about where she was over the weekend, and after the officers leave, she notices Jeremy's very interested in what she told them. A few days go by, and investigators decide they want to talk to Jeremy again. This time, the detective doesn't come to his house. Instead, he shows up at the job site on June 3rd while Jeremy is at work. And during this second conversation, Jeremy's version of the weekend starts to shift. Now he says that after work on Friday, May 29th, he went to a bar and stayed there until around 6 o'clock, something he didn't mention the first time around. He also says that night he talked to Patricia on the phone more than once, ordered a pizza from Domino's, and made calls to more than one friend. He also acknowledges something else that didn't come up before. The reason he called his friend Chris that night was to try to get marijuana. Despite all these new details, Jeremy sticks to the same core claim. He says that sometime around midnight, he went home, fell asleep, and stayed there until about 8:30 the next morning. But later that same day, June 3rd, Jeremy makes a request that catches his girlfriend off guard. He asks Patricia to bring a pair of his shoes, the Docksiders he usually wears around the house, down to Cape Cod. It's an odd request, and when she asks why he wants them, he refuses to explain. But here's what she doesn't know at the time. 2 days earlier, while he's back at Angela's house with the construction crew, Jeremy notices something that sticks with him. A box labeled Rhode Island State Police, which appears to contain a footprint impression. So Patricia brings the shoes to Cape Cod as he asked, and 2 days after that, on June 5th, Jeremy, along with the other construction workers who had worked on Angela's home, is asked to give footprint impressions to the police. At this point, investigators aren't just listening to Jeremy's story anymore, they're watching him. And according to people around him, he's acting nervous, especially after police show up at the job site again. One of the other men on the construction crew later says Jeremy is clearly rattled. He's talking about how police might try to pin the murder on him because he's had trouble with the law in the past. The coworker tries to calm him down, telling him not to worry. After all, he's never even been in Angela's bedroom or the upstairs bathroom. That's when Jeremy corrects him. He says he's actually been in that bathroom once, just briefly, to wet his hair under the faucet. The coworker thinks that's strange. They've been working at the house for about 3 months, and he's never seen Jeremy go upstairs at all. Meanwhile, investigators still have a job to do. They need to rule people out, so they collect blood samples from members of the construction crew to compare against DNA found on Angela.
On June 9th, Jeremy voluntarily gives a blood sample to police. Out of 23 tested samples, only one matches his. Just weeks later, on June 24th, he's arrested. When questioned, Jeremy denies ever leaving his home that night or going near Angela's house. He also repeatedly denies assaulting or killing her. But when detectives ask how his DNA was found inside the victim, he offers an explanation, claiming he would sometimes clean himself in her bathtub after being with his girlfriend. That story quickly falls apart. Medical experts say it's impossible, and his girlfriend denies his claim entirely. In 2001, a jury finds him guilty of first-degree murder and sexual assault. He's sentenced to life in prison without parole. Since then, Jeremy has stuck to a different argument, that the DNA evidence was planted. He claims police forced him to provide a semen sample in a hospital parking lot, a story detectives strongly deny and say is completely against procedure. Even more suspicious, Jeremy never mentioned this claim during earlier interrogations, only bringing it up later in court. Now in his 50s, he remains behind bars, still repeating the same story, and still fighting for a new trial.